Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire. Hey, Maggie.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, original Friends on Fire. How are you guys?
Good. Hi, Mike. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, it's good to see you both again.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad.
Hi.
I like how you greet your dad with a hi, Dad. Hi, Dad.
So thank you guys for coming back on the show. We first interviewed you in episode 78. We're now at like 140 episodes, which is kind of crazy, but a long time ago, 78, we interviewed you. It was one of our most popular episodes ever. And in that episode, we talked with you both about your friendship and how that led to both of your financial journeys and eventually early retirements. And we gave you guys the moniker of the OGs. The original Friends on Fire.
Yeah.
Because as we were going through this podcast and taking credit for all these great ideas, it was Dad, it was really you. Like, you had already done this with your friend and you had already gone through all of these things prior to me talking about it. So we have to give you credit here.
Okay.
He's so humble. He's like, okay, I'll take it.
That was great fun. It was a lot of fun to be on that podcast. 78. What it was?
78, yeah.
I
Also, we quickly glossed over that was one of our top 10 episodes of 2021, right?
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
yeah, kudos, gentlemen.
Yeah, people like hearing about how this all got started. People think retiring early is a new trend, but it's not. You guys did it, I think, like 60 years ago.
It seems like a little much.
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
So we just did this series of multiple episodes of talking about how I've resigned, how I'm early retiring, inspired by many people, including the original OGs. And, we went into all these details and ironically, maybe we should have done this one first, because what we want to talk about now is actually advice from real life people who have retired and who have been through this journey. And so this is kind of, I would say the end, but a somewhat final point in this series we're doing, talking about my specific retirement, but really trying to wrap it into advice that will be helpful for other people. And I think, Mike, you had this idea, and I thought it was a great idea to bring back the OGs to talk about, we give advice to our listeners, but let's be real. It's for me, right? I think so.
Yeah, Maggie needs some help in this transition. And so what better people to bring back on the show to give that advice than you guys?
Yeah, sounds great. Looking forward to it.
All right. So, Mark, you retired at age 55.
I did.
Dad, you retired at age 42.
Yep.
Maggie, who is ultra competitive, is retiring at age 41 because I think she wants to beat you.
Oh, yeah, I got the year on me.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even think about this, but I guess I sped up my retirement just to beat you a little bit. Mr. O'Leary, which I feel like I should call you Mr. O'Leary for some reason. Mike's dad. I did. I was like, I just want to make sure it's at least a month before he did it. Just kidding.
Good for you.
I'll be almost 42 when this is happening, by the way. I want to say within like a month or two. So it's pretty close.
Oh, well, maybe I still hold the record after this. Eh?
We'll see. Maybe there'll be a hiccup in Maggie's plan and you'll continue to have the lead.
Maybe something we say will postpone it.
Very true.
So what I'd like to do is start out with a little context for your situations when you were leaving work. So can you both tell us about your last jobs in corporate America? So the company you were with, the title you had, the location, and your responsibilities, and just let us know what you were deciding to leave behind at that point. Who would like to go first?
Jack, I'll let you go first.
All right. I was the director of finance at the General Dynamics Corporation, and my specific job was internal consulting, and then I also ran the external consultant teams we had a kind of unusual relationship with it because I used to actually participate on the teams to make sure they stayed on doing what we wanted them to do. I was working projects for the executives in the company, and I liked the job. It was great. My leaving the job had some more to do with the fact that they wanted to move the whole business to Washington, and I didn't want to relocate my family, so I just turned down the job to move.
I forgot about that aspect of your job. Do you think if they hadn't relocated, like how much gas do you think you had left in you at that point if they hadn't pushed that?
I really enjoyed the job, and it wasn't as if the kids were kind of, I guess they weren't close to going to college when this happened.
Yeah, I was 10. I wasn't anywhere near going to college, Dad.
Well, it isn't as if, I think I probably would have waited until the kids went to college, because as soon as Jesse went off to college, Adrian and I sold the house and started heading south. So I would say 5 years, but I had different decision points. I really wasn't trying to hit a money number. I thought I already hit it. I was just interested in, well, what's the easiest and best family exit plan? I didn't think of it as a corporate plan, exit plan.
It's interesting.
Mark?
I was the vice president of international business development for the Boeing company and was responsible for their sales and marketing in the military and space side of the company. So I was on the road a lot and very international travel. I took a more traditional route to retirement, I think, than Jack did. Jack, I hung around till I was 55, and I had a defined pension plan, which vested when I was 55 years old. And I had 3 kids in college. So that was a pretty big pretty significant cash flow event. So anyway, it was, I guess, a fairly responsible position. But I had enough, by the time 55 came around, I had been traveling for a long time. I'd been away from the family and more than I wanted to be. And it was time to do something else.
Well, you did a lot of heavy international travel, right?
I did. I think I was on the road maybe 40% of the time, which was a lot.
Yep.
So it's interesting. We were going to kind of ask you guys, what made you decide to leave those jobs, but you kind of both covered it a little bit, but I just want to dig into that just a little bit more. And I'll start with you, Mark, since you were just talking about that. I think it's interesting that you mentioned just kind of, that your kids were in college, which in a way makes you want like an influx of cash, obviously, to continue to fund a, expensive time in a parent's life. But also I actually see a lot of people today who they almost seem to get their second wind when their kids are gone, when they're like out of their house day to day, so when you even making that comment of saying, I was traveling a lot, I wanted to spend more time with family, which doesn't just include, college age kids, but I'm just interested to hear a little bit more about the dynamics, given that your kids were, somewhat out of the house at that point.
Well, we lived in St. Louis, which is where their corporate headquarters were for the military and space side of the company. And we're from New England. We grew up in the Boston area. And our mothers were both alive. Our dads had passed away. And we always had said we wanted to get back at some point to New England. So we were anxious to get back because they weren't getting any younger. And we had missed a lot of extended family events, Maggie, not so much the kids, but the extended things, various funerals and all that kind of stuff. And it took a big chunk out of our lives, I guess. And I also wanted to spend more time with Linda. She had a medical event a few years before that. And it just makes you come to the conclusion that there's a little more to life than just going to work and schlepping around the globe and trying to sell airplanes. So So that was sort of the 55 in my sense was really a financial decision as much as anything. That's when all the financial pieces came together.
It's so interesting, and I think it's equally admirable. Though you kind of mentioned, you were later at 55. Later is all relative, because that's still very young for formally retiring, right? And I just think it's interesting because Mike and I work with a number of people, particularly in senior positions, that are about that age, right? Like right in that age. And I often sort of look around and think, like, I know how I feel about, like a mix of burnout, a mix of just being, tired from young kids and a demanding job and, all of these different demands on my time and wanting to be able to put time into other things. But I'll look at those people in positions higher than I'm in and think, like, I often will think like, oh, I wonder if they've gotten a second wind of some sort. And I think at times I just get to the point where I'm like, no, I don't think it's that. I think we're just all wired differently on like what we want and what we value. And so I think it's just interesting to kind of hear you talk about those moments you had of these thoughts of, life short. And
yeah, can I add something to maybe
go for it.
About different people? I think the people's values are dramatically different. And I think of most of the people you find higher up in the executive roles of a company are really more enthused by remaining in that system. And that really is their life goal. And they probably don't want to give it up at 65, I think that's the way they're built. And I think it's because the values are so much different.
So let me ask you a question on that, because I totally agree with you. And I think it's a great point. To double click on it, do you think it's like when you say they're kind of enthused by it still, like it still excites them and everything, do you think it's also, though, that the money and the lifestyle is something they value?
Well, I'm sure they like the money and the lifestyle, but I think it's more about the feedback they get, and I think their self-esteem. That it's something they're proud to be doing, and it energizes them. I mean, you say you're burned out. They're going to be the ones that retire, and then they're going to burn out because they're retired. They won't know what to do. But I think it's their values.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's almost, a lot of it's just the personal identity that people get from those roles, which was a big thing I had to get past personally of when the thought even first entered my mind, thinking like, why would I walk away from some level of accomplishment and something where, I've gotten to this point and people value me and I'm in charge of XYZ, and, what will it mean when I don't have all that in my life?
Yeah. And I think, Maggie, that as people get older, the company becomes a bigger element of their life, which in my view is unhealthy. And they ignore the outside elements. They're wrapped up. They're in a 60-hour week grind, and in the daily hubbub of the job, and they tend to lose track of. They've got plenty of money, so it's not money that's keeping them there. Although they may want more, because at the end of the day, all you're going to do is give it to your kids anyway. So. They stick around because, as Jack said, because they like the job. And I think it's because they don't have a hell of a lot else to do with their life, personally. Yeah. But that's just my own opinion.
Well, we've now just offended all of our executive listeners, Mark.
Well, maybe it'll give us some thought about differentiating or different timings of changes and things. I think a lot of people just don't know how to reinvent themselves.
And I think we've all said it a few different ways, but everyone's wired differently and has different values. And so they genuinely may, like it and value it in a way that, again, I spent a long time thinking that way and sincerely being that way. So I think to your point, you can change and reinvent yourself, which is what I'm in the process of doing. Sometimes I'm like dragging myself along by myself I was trying to picture like me dragging myself, but you know what I mean? I'm not sure that's visually making sense to the people we're talking to now or our listeners.
Let me ask one more question of you, Dad. You had mentioned that you would have kept working for a lot longer had the company not moved, but you did not have the same attachment to work that some of the executives did that you guys were just referencing.
Oh, yeah, never. I like working hard, and it wouldn't matter to me whether I was working in a yard or working at a business. I just like hard work,
Yeah.
and I like to be productive. I remembered I always thought there was kind of I really didn't have a moderate or low gear. And like when I was working at the company, I remember your lacrosse days when you wanted to play lacrosse, and I decided that I had to help you support it because the team might not succeed in staying together. They had some problems and they were losing some of the adult volunteers. And I went to, I think, I'm not sure if you were in the meeting or not. I don't think you were, but I went to the meeting with the parents and I told them that they said, well, what would who wants to run this? And I said, well, I'll be glad to take any job that somebody doesn't want.
That means you're in charge, by the way.
It did. They made me. I did everything. Nobody ended up volunteering, and I was at one point the sole volunteer on the team, and I was making equipment for the field and all kinds of. But I basically took this. This is what I mean by this. I just like working hard on stuff, and I think that is what exhilarates me. It makes a lot of people tired, but it exhilarates me.
Okay, so just to go back to me, which is why you guys are here, to help me. I'm only half joking, by the way, but okay, so I am about 90 days out from leaving corporate America. It is, as I've described it, one of the most exhilarating and terrifying feelings at the same time, right? Like some days I'm excited, some days I'm terrified. I'm like, what have I done? Was this the stupidest thing I've ever done? Just walking away from a very high salary at the peak of my earning potential, or probably fairly close to the peak of it. And I am now when we're recording this, I'm about 90 days out from my last day at work. And to be clear, not that I'm counting, but that 90 days is actually like in the low 50s of actual working days, because I only work 4 days a week now and I'm on vacation 1 week, and I've maybe counted it and it's like 53 days left. So I have 53 working days left in me in this sort of, job, corporate America, high demand, full time, all that. What I want to get a sense of, like, what were you guys doing in your last few months? Like, did you know that was your last few months? Did your boss know? Had you already actually resigned? And just kind of what did that like last few months of your working life, your full-time working life look like?
I had an unusual situation because I was really working on the plan for 20 years. And it just happened to be that the first piece of the plan was to save enough money in 20 years to retire.
You sound like Mike's dad, by the way.
But I think though that I was prepared enough for it that it really wasn't very stressful at all. And in fact, the decision happened very quickly that they decided they were going to move to Washington. And so I wasn't unprepared to just say, okay, well, I'm sorry, I can't move my kids. And that's what happened. So I think it is because I had thought things out and because I had reached a level where I was ready to retire if I needed to. I think the expression I used to always say was that I wanted to work as long as it was fun. And breaking up the house and going to Washington, which I hate, would not be fun. So that was just the trigger, and it was very kind of relaxing event for me. I wasn't stressed out at all by it.
I love the term a relaxing event. It just sounds, you honestly just saying that like kind of calmed a lot of my anxiety.
Well, maybe I can comment some more because, I noticed that if you're fretting about the decision, or if you're wondering, am I making a mistake? That's holding you up from getting on with the plan, And I'd like to, the only thing that I wrote out all these notes to talk from, and the only thing that I wrote out is this paragraph. The rest of them aren't going to fit in much with the plan, but I wanted, the biggest issue in early retirement, in my case, is in your case now, is being emotionally and creatively ready to retire. You are switching from an outside directed life to a totally self-directed life. And I think you need to reinvent yourself and define a new profile of purpose. And I suggest that the best source, and maybe the only good source for such a profile, is your values. And I think putting those pieces together, if you got those pieces straightened out, I think you'd feel pretty good about it all.
Yeah.
You don't look like that.
No, I like started tearing up while you were reading that. That was a very profound. By the way, your son made me cry on a recent podcast when he read the poem you used to, apparently, unless this was like a made up story that you used to carry in your wallet. Did you used to carry a poem in your wallet?
In your planner.
Or in your planner, sorry.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I was in the storage unit for a 4 hours drive from here, and I pulled my planner out. This is
Wow.
So, Dad, prove that my story was correct.
Is there a
What
poem in
poem
there?
did you carry around?
Well, I got it right here.
Like he's like, I got 10 different poems. Which one you want?
No, it's just one. It is.
I really hope this is the right poem.
Just read the title or I'm going to cry.
Robert Frost.
Yeah.
That's
And,
it. Well,
It's called A Road Less Traveled, a path not taken. The road not taken.
The road not taken.
Yeah.
To some extent, this was what I was interested in doing. I always felt that I was going to do different things than most people would decide to do.
Yeah.
And so the poem was that to me.
yeah.
And it was in this there. There it is.
That's impressive. I'd like a photo of that original, by the way. We got to put that on the social medias.
Yeah, it's a
But
good
I
idea.
think it's because I kind of thought out what I wanted to do. I knew I was taking a risk by leaving, but I think I felt as though I had a lot of flexibility about what I do that would help. If I ran out of money, I know how to live in the woods. I could do a Unabomber.
Yeah. Man, until you got to the Unabomber part, I was right there with you.
I need the shed,
I know. I'm just kidding. I know I was like silent for a minute after you first read the thing that you had kind of prepared. It was really profound. And the reason I was silent is because I was like, it was sinking in. And I feel like I have slowly been on this journey over the past couple years of redefining my purpose and values and kind of refinding a new identity and creating a new identity slowly. And meeting Mike has played a huge role in it. I try not to compliment him too much on it because he gets a big head about it, but like he's been a big influence in it. And doing this podcast has been a big influence. Just a number of things, talking to people like you guys has been a huge influence. And I still will park that in another category for therapy. I still have all this like fear and anxiety and keep thinking about it. Like I know it's the right path, but I just keep going back to like, oh, but what, whatever. It doesn't even matter because I'm still resolute on my path. I know it's the right thing deep down. I'm just sort of like, I constantly am like looking behind my shoulder, if that makes sense in any way.
Well, I think you probably need to find a way to make it enjoyable to put the pieces together. And I think that should be the near-term goal. And some of that's you say you're committed to it, and I think there's no better way to keep your mind on it than getting going on it.
Yeah, that's a great statement. I don't know if this is what you mean by enjoyable to put the pieces together, but like I definitely have like a lot of lists of all the things I need to do transition-wise at work. My bucket list of all the things I want to do after work. Like I literally have a list of 100 plus things, large to, small to large that I want to, spend my newfound free time doing. Okay. I know we spent a bit on that. Mark, I really want to hear your perspective and thoughts on same question. If you remember the question.
Well, yeah, I've moderately lost the bubble, but I think the question was, how did I deal with before I retired, or I announced my retirement.
Yep.
And I just kept doing the job. And when I retired was a function of our economic cycle at work, when raises come and when incentive compensation got announced and options get awarded and all that kind of stuff. And it turned out that it happened right around February. So I just, I was making trips and I came back into town and I was on my way on another trip. In this case with my boss, and we were both waiting for the plane, and that's what I told him I was going to retire. And when we got to his office, he was in DC. His office was in DC. I explained to him that I'm not doing this to be difficult. I'll stay as long as you want me to stay. Until you have a replacement for me. But I just want to let you know that my intent is to retire, and we're going to sell the house and go back to the East Coast.
So how far in advance was that? Like before that February time, like months in advance, weeks?
No, I told him in February.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And,
so then how much longer till you?
He asked me to stay around until August.
Oh, okay. So like a good 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, it didn't matter to me, really. So I said, stay as long as you want me to stay. So I just continued to work, and I didn't do as much travel after I announced the retirement. There was no point in going to meet customers over in Italy or wherever. So I didn't do nearly as much travel, but I managed to keep busy and stay out of trouble until he finally punched out.
And were you like, particularly in your case, Mark, were you working just as hard up until the end, or was that last 6 months, aside from like the less travel, was it also just less to do because things were slowly getting picked up by other people, and like was it a nice easing out?
I throttled back on the travel, so it was an easing out in many respects. Probably 2-3 months before I finally walked out the door, it was pretty slow. I was actually a little bit bored, frankly. I just wasn't used to that pace.
So that's interesting. So you guys had very demanding careers up until like close to your retirement. Then it started to wind down to the point where you were bored. What was it like on the last day? Was it emotional? Was it anticlimactic? Did they even know you were still there? Tell us about your last day in corporate America. Full time, I should say.
Well, I don't know if I remember my exact last day.
I think that means it was anticlimactic, right?
Well, I think they were happy to get rid of me by that point. I had about 5 different retirement parties and different locations around the country. And so everybody had said their goodbyes, and the last day I just packed up, and the one I was going to miss the most was my executive assistant. Mm-hmm. And because she had been with me for a number of years, and she was a real sweetheart. So it was tough. It was emotional to walk out the door and leave her behind. But other than that, it was, see you later.
Peace.
And Dad, what about you? What was your last day like?
I don't remember the last day, and I'll tell you why. I'm sure it was the last 30 days or something. I got a story to tell. I was involved in trying to sell the space systems division of General Dynamics that launches our rockets and all that sort of stuff. And the guy who was brought in from the outside to sell it was that they called me up. They wanted to ask me some questions about the division. So I think there were a number of people on the other end of the line talking to me. And I started to tell them how complicated it would be to sell, because there's really only 2 companies around that could buy it or would buy it, and that there's nobody overseas that would want it, because the only people doing this overseas are nations. There's no corporations doing this, And so then I told him some other stories about, well, here's some of the problems with the launch systems. If you blow one of these things up, you lose a lot of money. It doesn't matter about the next 5 flights. You're going to be paying for it, And it was funny how the guy who was going to sell it was kept I didn't hear much from him. And I think he thought he clicked the phone off, because he leaned over to somebody and he says, "Geez, isn't this guy not coming to Washington?" And I said, and I didn't say anything. And he said, "Well, when is he supposed to leave?" And nobody knew. And so I said, "Well, I'm leaving in 24 days." And And so the next day they called me up and they wanted to know if I wanted to be a consultant to them for some undetermined period afterwards. And that was a great deal for me. I went down from, you're right, I had the summers off, but I went down from, I guess it's 270 days or something of the year I could go down to 30 or 60 days of the year, because I don't think they'd have a big deal for me to do, but they'd pay me well for it. So I thought that was just kind of a bonus on the way out. And I did consult with them for actually it was about a year and a half.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So your final day on full-time payroll was followed immediately after by a day on the consulting payroll.
That's right. I walked out the door, went home, and sat in my office, played some chess.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a very easy transition for me, and it was great.
So we've talked about, you guys already kind of alluded to some of the feelings or some of the importance of kind of, your identity and purpose and other pieces earlier in our discussion. But I want to shift to what it was like after, like, I mean, and Jack, in your case, once you really like quit consulting even, right? Like there was a point where you really were not doing any, more paid work for some long period of time. And so I'm curious to know kind of from both of you what that felt like in like your first few months, right? I've heard feedback from others that it can be emotionally tough, just that loss of identity. And, what was it like for you two? Was it, rainbows and unicorns and sunshine, or were there, a lot of emotional shifts you went through? And
well, I'll start with this, Jack. I think for me, the biggest shock, I guess, was, when you leave a big corporation, you don't get the email. You walk out the door, you hand over your badge, you sign all these documents, and you're literally, it literally is your last day. There is no sliding out the door. You leave the company, and that's it. Your email, everything is cut off. So that was a little bit, wasn't shocking, but it was a little bit jarring to have that abrupt. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought it would be a slightly more of a glide slope to it. So that was the only real surprise I think that I had in the whole process. But I do think that setting aside the immediate aftermath, it really took me about 2 years to throttle down. When you're in go mode, what I used to think of as the go mode, and you're in it all the time, every day, even weekends, really, at Jack and I at our level, you just don't stop.
what was happening during those 2 years? Like, was it a slow, was that a kind of, if you were to, map that out, was it a slow thing where you were just getting better and better over time?
No, it's just a slow glide path where you're used to running, 90 miles an hour, and you don't run 90 miles an hour in retirement. And it's just something that it takes a while to throttle back and really truly relax. At least it did for me. Now, some people might take less time and some people might take more. It was about a 2-year period.
And I can attest that Mark's lifestyle now is very relaxing, because I had the privilege of staying with him in Maine for a few days, and you spent a lot of time walking on the beach and watching TV and reading and relaxing in your cottage. So you have fully achieved your new pace of life.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Now, am I supposed to say something? Go, tell me the question again.
Yeah, so it was kind of just once you, like, it might be for you, Jack, after you quit consulting and really had, large amounts of free time on your hands, or perhaps your summers off. But just what did that transition look to you in your first few months after work? So like Mark was saying, as you're, going from, 50, 60 hour weeks to nothing, or in your case. I
think you're going to like this answer. I think it was about 5 years before I left work, or before they we're going to move to Washington, and I decided to leave work. I started to take the summers off, as Mark was talking about, and I was flying with my kids over to Europe and stuff. And so I was already throttling down when I was still there. And by the time I was going to go walk out the door, and I probably would have had, I would have wondered, what am I going to do right now, other than that meeting that I told you about? And so I transitioned to a reinvention occurred automatically for me. I ended up going into the consulting stuff. And then after, there were other people that heard I was doing consultant and people I knew, and I ended up doing other work there too. I think it went on for some time. I think I was working 30 to 60, maybe 90 days a year at the most, but 30 to 60 days a year. And I thought that was great. And I would have continued to do that forever too. But I didn't really have any sort of emotional shock. It did not occur until a long time later.
Well, okay. So when you say a long time later, like what was that? When and why?
10 years.
But so tell me about like what happened 10 years later and where did it come from?
Well, I think the main thing that happened was that my wife and I decided to kind of redirect. I think it coincided with the marriages of the kids. One of the things that happened is that we all ended up in Florida, and the kids were going to graduate school. And they both decided to get married, and they both got jobs, and then they both left Florida. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, well, why would we live here then, And that's what started us to go on what was supposedly a 10-year plan to travel. And we sold the condo, and we took off, and we went traveling, and we traveled for 8 years until the pandemic occurred. So I'm going to be hard pressed to find any stress in what happened to me professionally,
But it was just the life change of getting to where you were traveling large amounts.
Well, we loved that. I think Adrienne was built for travel. She was a foreign exchange student in high school and in college. And we started traveling with the kids pretty early. So we had kind of a family plan that was more important to us than anything else.
And by the way, Maggie, I consulted for about 2 years after I retired, and I was working with Jack, and we decided would be fun to do it together. I don't think. Let me back up. You have to have some kind of a plan as to what you're going to do. You just can't show up at the breakfast table Monday morning and say to yourself, "What am I going to do now?" You have to have a plan. You have to have really thought your way through it. And otherwise, you're going to have a real problem, I think, in terms of acclimating.
Yeah.
Going from go mode 90 miles an hour to zero is, in a screeching halt. That just doesn't work. You've got to glide your way down.
I like the word acclimating and just your point about, you got to have a plan. Do you believe your plan can be simple? Like a more complex plan might be, hey, I'm going to go travel with, or more firmed up plan, I'm going to go travel with my family. I'm going to go, whatever. But when I say a more simple plan, I mean like, I'm not going to have I'm not going to put any big goals and expectations on myself for the first month. And then I'm taking some trips with my kids, and then I'm, whatever. But just even in that first month to say, hey, I'm not going to let myself, sleep in and become a blob every day, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for a walk with my husband. I'm going to, do some stuff I need to do around the house, just the idea of kind of having some simple structure in your days. Do you think that constitutes a plan? Just curious.
I'll answer it if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's a sabbatical. And I think that's a great thing. I think if you need the break and you need to be able to relax and sit around and say, well, I'd like to construct a plan, but I want to do it with an open mind or cleared mind, I think that's probably a very healthy step to take given what you're walking away from. And I would try to make it a celebration at the same time. Because put the pieces together and you out on the patio, that sounds terrific.
I love it.
This is a good segue because our final question for you guys is to wrap up all of this experience in your stories into some tactical advice for Maggie / other listeners who may be in a similar situation or have a similar goal. But what advice would you give Maggie, knowing that she's 90 days out and then she's going to have her final day at work and then she's going to have this period of acclimating to her new lifestyle? What advice can you bestow upon her? The original Friends on Fire.
And by the way, do we mention my husband's doing this and his last day is in the exact same day? So
for Maggie and Greg,
keep that in mind for perspective. We thought it'd be fun to pull the parachute cord together or jump together, whatever.
Why in the world did you think that?
I don't know. Is that a bad idea? I mean, it's not too late for me to fix this. Yeah, no, we've both resigned and we have the exact same last day, which was just for fun.
So what are you going to do?
On the second day, on the first day. I mean, I really do. I have it almost exactly a month before we then go on a 6-week trip with our kids. And so, I like the way Jack was talking about a sabbatical. I think we both are in the mindset of like, we need a good bit of time to decompress. And no offense, but going to Europe for 6 weeks with 3 young kids is not what I call decompressing. So I think some of the decompressing is going to start when we get back and the kids are back in school and we have a, prolonged period of, time ahead of us where we're, have at least 6 to 7 hours during the day when our kids are at school. But like I said, we've got these like long bucket lists of stuff we want to do, right? Everything from just focusing on, our health and fitness and having more time to just go for walks to like, we've got a lot of hobbies. I'm going to build a custom bed. We actually did a whole episode on, in this series of all the things that my husband and I are planning on doing. Again, from like fun projects to, different life goals to spending more time on the podcast, stuff like that. But a lot of it is in the mindset of, I don't even really know until I get some time to decompress more. If that
and she
sense.
Needs your help to develop this plan, Mark.
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me, what should I do?
Well, I think that at your age, you've still got a lot of runway left in terms of productive work life, if I can call it that, where you're still, and you will be for many years at your peak intellectual capability. So you can really do almost anything you want, and you've got time for it. So I think that getting your bucket list done is a great idea because you're going to have a lot of different experiences, and you'll find out what you like and what you don't like, and what you'd rather spend more time on, and what you just don't want to spend any time on. So I think that as you go through this bucket list, you'll get a much better idea. You won't spend the rest of your life reinventing the bucket list every year. I mean, you're gonna do stuff and that you really like, and you'll continue to do more and more of it. And I think that will be the key to what's ahead of you. Really, is when you go through your bucket list, what did you really like?
Yeah.
What were you passionate about, and just continue to evolve and work on that.
Okay, I think that's a great point. What's the name of your favorite book about the Design Your Life?
Designing Your Life? Yeah.
Yeah, it talks a lot about just that test and learn of like, try out a lot of stuff, see what makes you happy, see what doesn't.
I got a kind of a lockstep thing that I'd recommend you do. If you haven't done it already, I really would try to do on the back of an envelope is kind of just write down what you think your chief values are. And I think so. There's something really good about getting to know yourself in terms of what's important to you. And I'm sure at some level you know this, but I think the problem with values is that there's going to be a top 2, and then there's going to be a bottom 5 sort of thing. And a lot of times the decisions that stress you out cause you have to pick one over the other, and because you don't know which, you haven't really established what the leader is, maybe you stress out. But I would really make an effort to avoid stressing out for it, and just make up your mind to look forward. I think the body kind of has a tendency to resist change, and I think the changing is exhilarating. So I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I think relaxing will probably, if you will allow yourself to make that part of the plan, to relax.
I'm still learning how to relax, but I know I'm capable of it.
Yeah, I can help with relaxing too. But I think what you want is if you relax enough, I think you'll find that some vision's going to just appear. But you got to clear out the extraneous decisions and issues, and if you have to do that in the backyard in a lawn chair, maybe that's what you do, but relax and let that happen. One thing that I found very interesting and I listened to intently was some of the Oprah tapes. And there was a tape on that she gave, which was the only one of hers that I ever bought. And it was the first one that I in her series of something. And it was called Desire and Destiny. And it really was a pep talk about trying to sort out your life and your vision of what you want to do. And I was listening to that before I developed some of the specifics of what I was going to do. I think finding a way to explore yourself and to explore how you feel about things can translate into what you do with your time. I think if you start looking at it and relaxing about it and thinking about it and turning it around and looking at all the sides, you'll probably something will just fall into place. I want to ask you about your Europe trip. When do you go, and how old are your kids?
We are going in like mid-June to the end of July, and my kids are 10, and 13.
Okay. I started traveling with Mike and Jesse when they were 5 and 7. And I think the first trip we took was a month-long trip to Europe. And what it was a test. I wanted to do a test. And it worked out great. We loved it. And I think the next year we did a 70-day trip to Sweden and Norway.
Wow.
But I found traveling with the kids was delightful for different reasons. I think kids, when they have their friends and they got the schools and they got all that stuff going on around them, I think they're much more jumping around. But when you're on the road with them, they know they're dependent on you to tell them which way you're going. And I think the family, my family, we got very close in terms of just enjoying being with each other, and it was very relaxing. And I think the kids also kind of, if they were screamers or criers or something, it was such a foreign environment that they couldn't relate to, that they didn't act the same way. But I'd be more optimistic about the trip and trying to figure out ways to desensitize yourself to being worried about the kids. I think the kids might be really thrilled with the trip. They might think this is a great adventure.
It's funny you say that. We've traveled a lot with our kids, and I find it a mix between enjoyable and incredibly stressful. But I think I could chalk up like 75% of that stress to the fact that Greg and I, the first chunk of the trip, first off, we've never gone for more than 2 weeks with them just because of, lengths of vacations while we're working. And even when you take a 2-week vacation, which is nice, the first half of it, or at least few days, you're still stressed from work. And half the time we're still working. We're still dealing with crap we didn't finish. And then there's kind of a middle part where we're actually kind of relaxed. And then the last few days I'm dreading going, not dreading because I don't hate my job, but it's just, I know what I'm going back to, right? It's more work and stress. And so I hope Greg and I both have this, fairly optimistic attitude that when we're not super stressed in our broader life, that travel and that time dedicated with the kids will be that much more enjoyable.
Well, I think you'll find that will change automatically if you go on longer trips. And I think we used to take the kids out of school and go. And one of the things that the teachers used to tell us was that, no, Adrian was always apologetic they would always tell her, no, they're going to learn a lot more with you than with us. And I think, but longer means you really settle down quite a bit on it. So I would agree with you. As soon as you take it out of a corporate travel idea and turn it into a mom and dad going to go mountain climb with their kids, it's much, much different.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to, Maggie.
I know. I mean, you guys, honestly, I don't know if you even fully realize like the nuggets of wisdom that you're sharing. They're very powerful. And I think you both, I've been kind of writing some notes, even just in this file Mike and I keep, but I'm looking forward to listening to this again and really like capturing some of the quotes and nuggets. Cause it's some very insightful comments, which is exactly what I would have expected, or what I did expect from both of you. But I just wanted to say thank you, because I think the advice, selfishly, it's super helpful for me at this point in my life. And then also I do, we were joking that this is just for me, but I think this is helpful as, many people are thinking about a path like this. And honestly, even if they're not, just thinking about, priorities and values and a lot of the things that we've talked about here in terms of, just being more intentional about the decisions we make and, how we're living our lives. And I think a lot of those exercises and approaches and ways of thinking are transferable to people in all stages of life.
How much time we have?
What did you want to talk about?
I can keep I got a couple of things that I want to say. I think one of the things that we might want to do, Mark and I go through it, do's and don't do's. Like one of my don't do's is that you shouldn't make big life decisions right after you leave. And I think you should test things. And a lot of times there's kind of a euphoria when some people leave and they end up making decisions they shouldn't. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about 3 months ago that was talking about baby boomers up north who were retiring, and they went back and they contacted real estate agents, and they wanted to know, how do the baby boomers do? And the baby boomers came down, and they were going down to places that were nice to travel to, and they immediately bought a house. And some of them actually bought houses sight unseen because of the chaos in the real estate market. And they were running around doing that, but they followed what happened afterwards. And about 40 to 60%, depending on where you were in the country, of the people ended up selling the houses within 3 years. And I think the idea is that when you're leaving it, when you're transitioning from something you've been doing for a long time, it's back to this completely directed lifestyle to an undirected lifestyle. Getting free and doing something that looks like it's very pretty from a distance may not be the good idea. Sometimes waiting to make huge decisions, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, that's great.
It's great.
Mark, do you have any final do's and don'ts?
No.
No pressure, because I think Jack's got more. I see him pulling up his notes.
I'm sure Jack has been writing notes all afternoon. I think it's an exciting journey that you're about to launch off on, Maggie, and you should be excited about it. You should be happy about it, because it's a different phase in your life, and you don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
But if you're prepared for it financially, and you don't have to worry about that aspect of it, and you've got your health, and you've got Greg with you,
yeah,
and focus on making sure that all those things, that your family relationships stay strong, and everything else will work itself out.
Yeah, I like that.
Everything else is in the weeds.
Yeah, it's a great point. By the way, I forgot to make the joke earlier, Mark, that one of my bucket lists is to come visit you in Maine also. So
yeah, you should.
We got plenty of room. We got plenty of room. We'd love to have you up there, Meg.
Oh, great. I mean, I think you mean that sincerely, because I really did. I would love to come hang out with you guys.
I do, but don't come with Mike.
I was going to come with Greg. Greg's great.
Yeah, come with Greg.
I'm kind of a
I like
freeloader.
Greg way better than Mike.
Well, I'm pretty sure you guys could be providing advice on this lifestyle transition all night long. But we do want to save some of this for an upcoming episode, because we definitely want to have you guys back on. And hopefully sooner than like 60 episodes from now, this was my fault. Maggie does most of the interview scheduling because she handles the social and interacts with people. And it was my job to schedule you guys.
Yeah,
And I
he
just
had
kept
that
pushing
job
it
like
off,
6
which
months
is why
ago.
it took from episode 78
Really?
until now. Yeah.
Don't worry. In my early retirement, I'll take over things like that from Mike.
Uh-huh.
So I think it would be interesting if maybe in a few months after Maggie has stopped working, we can all check in again and provide some an update from Maggie and
Yeah.
some more advice.
We can
from
call
the
it OG
original Friends on
therapy.
Fire. What do you guys think?
With Maggie.
Yeah.
Let's do it up in Maine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an
Let's
even
do it-
better
let's do it
idea.
at the beach.
Recorded live from Maine.
That's a cool idea.
Wait, but I'm still not allowed to come on that
You
trip,
could just
right?
come in
It's
for
just
1
Maggie and
hour to
Greg?
record and then leave.
We'll do a Zoom call with Mike.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's right. I'll have to call in from Atlanta. All right, guys. Well, this was awesome, and it's always fun to hear your stories and perspectives. And I know Maggie got a lot out of it, but we really appreciate you guys coming
Oh, it
on
was
the show.
fun. It was fun. Thanks for having us.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. I did get a lot out of it. Meant a lot. And again, Jack, you almost made me cry like Mike made me cry when he read that poem the other day. I was in an emotional state of mind that day also, which is kind of like most days. Let's be honest.
Congratulations, Maggie.
Yep. Congratulations too.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.